Welcome to the Boston Bros Political Show. I'm Jim Campanini, co-host with Boston Herald columnist Peter Lucas. Peter, how are you doing?
Doing terrific.
This podcast is coming to you from InsideLowell.com studios, brought to you by WellPoint. WellPoint, the only health plan offering health care benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. All at WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. So, Peter, a lot is going on since our last show, huh?
A big newsy week last week, and this coming week, it's going to be tough to keep up with it.
Yeah.
But we'll do our best.
Well, you know, you remember the famous quote from the movie Good Will Hunting, Matt Damon to play the key role. He says, "How do you like them apples?" Okay. Well, how does Harvard like them apples now? What do you think?
Well, this is a knockdown, drag-out fight between the Trump administration and Harvard. And I'd bet on the Trump administration. This is an outlandish development, Harvard refusing to comply with the president's task force on anti-Semitism.
Okay.
And of course, the Trump administration is holding back $2 billion in federal aid to Harvard, as if Harvard needed it. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, my point is, you know, Harvard is a private school, okay, and the federal government is saying, hey, in order for us to give you money for this federal research, he says, we want you to comply with some of these things. One of them was, you know, getting rid of all their DEI initiatives, and to basically the other primary thing was the anti-Semitism, root out anti-Semitism. Now Harvard is coming back and saying, hey, everybody's got their free speech rights, which I agree. But when you put students in jeopardy, especially Jewish students, you've got an obligation to protect those students.
In jeopardy, in fear.
In fear.
In fear of going to classes.
Yeah, and I've got to imagine that some of these, okay, we know that it's a elitist school and stuff. There's probably a lot of liberals, but I imagine there's also a lot of conservatives who went to Harvard, and where are their voices rising and talking about this? I mean, defying the president and picking on these causes that are really detrimental, I think, to the Harvard trademark. I mean, you're right. I don't think they're going to win this battle overall.
And besides, if Harvard was interested in the whole financial situation and losing $2 billion, to me and to Harvard, that's like walking around money. Harvard has an endowment of $52 billion. And it seems to me it could use some of that money instead of relying on taxpayers getting money from the federal government. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has a budget of $58 million. Harvard has an endowment almost as much.
$58 billion.
$58 billion.
Yeah.
Harvard has an endowment almost as much as the annual Massachusetts state budget.
Yeah.
The city of Cambridge, its budget is $1 billion compared to Harvard's annual budget, operating budget, which is $6 billion.
Yeah. No, I think I read in the Boston Globe that Harvard had as much money in that endowment as 3 or 4 different countries in the world, and I think one of them was either Ireland or Northern Ireland or something. But that is unbelievable. That's incredible. And the other thing about that story was that there are certain restrictions on that endowment. Harvard just can't go in and take some money out and put it towards this funding shortfall if the Trump administration does pull the funding. Some of that money or in that endowment is targeted towards certain things, and so they'd have they'd have to take money from their portfolio, their investment portfolio. Right now, they've been using the dividends and investment to buck up their annual budget.
Yeah, but the public has finally come to its senses and asking, why is taxpayer money going to Harvard?
Yeah.
The richest college in the world.
Yeah, and I'd question some of those professors, what they're doing with that money for research. I mean, I can understand some science and stuff like that, but you know what? This is a free marketplace, and we've got companies and businesses. Maybe that research money should be going to the companies, right? To do this and that to pay taxes. Harvard doesn't even pay taxes. Imagine if they had to pay taxes on that endowment, and they're a nonprofit, right?
Listen, Cambridge is supporting Harvard. Harvard should be supporting Cambridge.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so and plus they're overwhelming. They've got one of the highest percentages of foreign students in their.
Well, that's where they make a lot of money.
Yes.
Because many of these foreign students are not poor individuals coming over to this country seeking a handout. Many of them come from rich families that they pay full boat, upfront, cash for their students.
Well, and that's another thing. I mean, I was telling you about an incident that happened this morning. You know, I go to the same place to buy a newspaper, and nice people run the place, and they always had a little coffee clutch there. And I told them I was coming to do this show, and we were talking about some issues involving Trump, and wow. The octane just went up in the room. One person started calling Trump all kinds of names, and then they started Harvard, best school in the world, and he's ruining it. I said, wait a minute. I said, if you want to debate and talk about some things, dial it back a little. I said, but why do Democrats always call people names? And he said, well, Trump calls people names. I says, well, yeah, and we know he calls people names, and I don't like it, and a lot of Republicans don't like it. But I said, here you are, I says, raising the you don't want to talk about it, and all you're doing is calling this one a name, calling that a name. I says, dial it back now. I says, these students who come to Harvard, these foreign students, I says, they're in this country. It's a privilege to them to come here. They're on a visa.
They are guests.
They're guests. Yeah. I said, so they have to respect our laws, and they shouldn't be sowing the seeds of chaos and anarchy. I says, yes, they have free speech rights, but I said, you know, anti-Semitism. I said, you for anti-Semitism now? And the guy was mumbling after that and stuff. So I just don't understand when you cut through all the cut to the chase about all of this stuff. I mean, a lot of these people are just twirling their tongues.
No, I don't know. But look, if Harvard really wants to get back at Trump, what they should do is give Joe Biden an honorary degree. The next commencement seminar in June or July, whenever they have it.
Well,
A doctor of arts or a doctor of philosophy or.
Well, I think Harvard is going to look at itself, internally. And isn't Columbia doing that? Columbia was the first one who fell out of favor with the Trump administration because of all those anti-Semitism.
But they're sort of cooperating now.
Yes. So why is Harvard? Does Harvard think they're the beacon of light in all this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, after they give Joe Biden an honorary degree, like they gave an honorary degree to Tom Hanks, for instance, and Tom Hanks, was getting to look like Joe Biden. If you look, right? So maybe Hanks can make a movie about Joe Biden and call it Saving Joe Biden.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. And Hanks will play that. I like that. It was a good line. You got to work that into one of your columns.
It is.
It is.
Pick up the Herald on Thursday.
Oh,
You'll see the column.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So where do you think this is headed? Where do you think this fight between? I mean, is Harvard going to give in, or the Trump administration going to?
Well, look at it this way: Trump will not give in.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And Harvard is going to risk losing not only this $2 billion, but billions more beyond that because of other financial arrangements it has with the federal government. I don't see this is a no-win situation for Harvard.
Yeah.
Trump moves on to something else, but Harvard is stuck with this anti-Semitic image around the world.
Yeah.
And
Well, it was funny in that story that was that I read. Admissions were down for the first time. Applications, I should say, applications were down, and also donations from alumni were off something like 15%.
that's another big deal.
Yeah, and when 15% to Harvard is hundreds of millions of dollars, if not in the billion-dollar range. So it is having an effect. And of course, they've had three presidents in the last year and a half, 2 years.
Right.
That doesn't help the image. And now all these trustees, I mean, I'm a trustee at the local community college. I mean, one thing they don't like is scrutiny.
My question to you is: Senator Elizabeth Warren still on the payroll at Harvard?
Well, you don't hear about that, do you? And
She was making $300,000 a year.
Yeah, and
Worth every penny, by the way.
Oh, what does she teach?
I don't know, but she was worth every penny.
Oh yeah. So why has she been so quiet about all this? I think she did with Senator Markey put out some. They did attend one rally. I don't think it was Harvard related, but talking about the Trump oligarchy and some other nonsense and foolishness. I mean, has she solved the problem? Has Markey solved the problem at all for Massachusetts?
Is he our senator?
He is a senator.
Oh,
he lives
I
in
didn't
Virginia,
know that.
though.
No, I know that.
So
I don't know what he does.
and that's the other trouble I have. Why aren't Democrats saying, well, okay, even if you play ball with a real awesome common ground with Republicans and say we could do it better if we work together. Look, we got a framework, but they're not. They're resisting in attacking everything. Like this framework for the for Trump's budget. The budget bill that passed last week without any Democrat support whatsoever. It passed. I mean, they're going to give a tax cut. Okay, all the Democrats can keep saying is he's going to attack Social Security. I haven't seen any blueprint for cutting Social Security benefits. I think it would be suicide for the Republicans to do that.
Well, Joe Biden gave a speech on Social Security. He said the same thing, which Trump administration repeatedly has denied. They're not going to touch Social Security benefits.
Yeah.
In fact, Joe Biden is now getting a Social Security check. Now that he's out of the...
So maybe this is what Congresswoman Lori Trahan meant when she said that the Democrats have a messaging problem. Maybe it's all going to be we're not putting out enough rumors and smears and trying to hoodwink the people because there's a lot of crap on the internet and stuff, and how it filters and gets inside the mainstream media, and then they just swing with it, swing from the stars when there's no facts or substance behind it. It's really irritating, and most people are turned off by it.
It's fears, smears, gloom, and doom. That's about the Democratic Party platform these days.
Yeah. And I said to these, these nice people down at the convenience store, I says, hey, do you know of one person who has been deported from our region, Lowell, Billerica, Dracut? And, no, I know one guy, he's a student from India. He's going to be deported because he got a parking ticket.
Where, in Calcutta?
And I says, gee, that's a new one on me. I said, I haven't read that. I said, where'd you hear this? And then you just started mumble jumble. People are losing their jobs. I says, oh, really? I said, the only job losses I saw in the local newspaper were a couple of nonprofits that their COVID-19 relief funds ran out, and they've been told 2 and 3 years ago that the funding was going to run out. So I says, who's running these nonprofits? Why didn't plan for the day? I don't want anybody to lose their job, but all these companies now, they know that the money has run out, and if you didn't plan properly financially, I mean, I just don't understand it. Everything is like Trump did this, Trump did that. I don't even know anybody in the federal government. And I know a couple of dozen people. They didn't lose their jobs. Did you know anybody who's lost their job?
No, I don't.
What, a few interns and probationers have lost their jobs?
The only people I know have lost jobs recently, a couple of state cops.
Oh, geez. Okay. Now we're segueing into Massachusetts. Yeah, what's going on? The state police just can't get over the hump, can they?
No, it's one thing after another, state police. And this past Monday, 2 state cops went on trial for selling commercial driver's licenses to people who were not qualified to get them. One pleaded guilty, and the other one is still up for trial. It's just the latest in the long list of scandals that have haunted the state police now for almost, I don't know, 10 years.
But you know what was more disturbing than anything? And I know we had the overtime scandal. Okay, there's greed, and you know, if your supervisor is doing it and saying, hey, just put in a couple of extra hours and blah blah blah. Okay, I can understand that they hurt themselves, they hurt the taxpayer. But this was dishonest in giving licenses to people who might not be qualified to drive.
Truck driving.
Truck drivers, yes.
You ever been on 495 as it is now?
This is my point, and they could take lives, and we've seen it happen. People with drunk driving convictions and getting fake licenses, but this state police doing this, but. You not only hurt the guy who's a union truck driver, but also an independent truck driving company, and giving these licenses out to people who aren't qualified for it. And people trying to make a living the right way. I mean, I just can't believe, where are these state police going wrong? And not all of them like this, but you know what? There's a culture, Peter. There's a culture of people crossing the line. Okay, and it happens in the people, the organization that we are led to admire. Okay, and I just don't understand it.
Well,
is it the top?
I don't think in recent years the police have been policed in this state. And I think too many so-called prosecutors have looked the other way. And if it were not for Leah Foley, the U.S. attorney in Massachusetts, this case probably never would have come to court in the first place. She is doing double duty, as far as I'm concerned, dealing with political corruption and illegal immigrant crime than anybody else around. And if it weren't for her, I think we'd be overrun with crime and corruption in the state.
Yeah, you had 2 other politicians this past week who were also charged campaign finance violations, fraud. You had Representative Chris Flanagan, right,
from Cape Cod,
and then you had Tanya Fernandez Anderson, City Council from Boston, campaign finance abuses and fraud, and both of them were from the U.S. Attorney's office.
Both of them were from U.S. Attorney Foley's office, and none of them were from the state Attorney General Andrew Campbell's office.
Yeah, who seems to be filing daily suits against Donald Trump, federal lawsuits. She's protecting the state and its interests, and yet here we have all this political corruption. And the same thing happened when Governor Maura Healey was
half these suits that she's filed are phony suits. They go nowhere except she gets publicity. And politically, I can't blame her, because she's just doing what Maura Healey used to do when she was Attorney General and Trump was president in the first term. I mean, she used to sue them. She sued them over 100 times in 4 years. I don't know how she found time to do anything else. And it was during her tenure that the U.S. Attorney's Office moved on the state police for corruption under her very nose.
Well, it's really interesting that Foley took over for the Democrat U.S. Attorney Levy, right? Levy,
yeah,
Levy, and he was Joshua Levy. He was a Biden appointee. He could have gone out with a bang.
No, I think he was a Republican appointee.
Oh, he's a Republican appointee.
But he went by the books. He did a lot, and remember the college scandal, college entrance?
Okay.
That was his thing. No, he did quite a bit. He did quite a bit.
So these two cases were percolating though for a while.
The three of them were percolating.
Yeah, yeah, and the state attorney general just, I mean, it didn't even mention her in the press release whether they had collaborated.
There's no cooperation.
Yeah, I know. Usually they defer to their colleagues and say, well, we also got some support from, the state attorney general's office, because they might give some investigatory help or whatever. But
And don't forget, the attorney general's refused to represent State Auditor Diane Zaglio in this her petition to audit the Massachusetts legislature.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's, and here's a referendum that was passed by the voters, a state referendum, got over 60% of the vote. And you think one thing the Democrats like to follow are polls, but evidently only when it serves their purpose. And
well, the argument can be made if she had the authority, had the auditor the authority to audit the legislature, this Representative Chris Flanagan might have been exposed long before he was arrested and indicted by the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Well, at what point do you think that the U.S. Attorney might start looking into Andrea Campbell's mortgage application?
No.
Because I know, what goes around comes around, and here we are in New York. The State Attorney General, Letitia James, is now being scrutinized for mortgage fraud. The same thing she was accusing Donald Trump and won a conviction.
Well, Andrea Campbell did move out of Boston, and they bought a house down in the South Shore someplace.
And it's amazing how you were talking about the circle. What goes around comes around.
Yeah.
And here's this story that is now coming out about Letitia James. She bought a house in Virginia. She listed her father as her husband.
Right, yeah.
She needed a co-signer, and she said it was her primary residence. The Attorney General of the state of New Hampshire put down it was a primary location, which entitled her to get a lower mortgage rate, interest rate. Okay, I mean, where does this stuff come? You couldn't make this stuff up. Yeah. And then she bought a 5-unit apartment building, really nice, and
said it was 4 units.
And said it was 4 units. Yeah.
So one extra unit.
One unit disappeared, and it's not being taxed or whatever in downtown. I know it was Manhattan or Brooklyn or something. And I'm saying, how do these people think that it's not going to catch up to them? I mean,
who would have thought that Letitia James would go to jail before Donald Trump?
Yeah, and you know what? And you know what gets me? Now, I retired in 2018. I made a good buck when I was working. I don't have the income that I was making before. But, I started my own little company, and it pays my golf dues, and it takes me and my wife to Florida every year. But you know what? I'm still using the same CPA with a third of the income I was making before because I don't want anything to go wrong. And, I'm paying for the CPA. So I'm losing money when you come to it. And today I had to pay into the U.S. Treasury for the first time in 3 years because I did have a pretty good year last year with my business. Okay, things picked up after COVID. Things went downhill with the wine industry. So here I am, retired, but nervous about it. I want to make sure the government gets what I owe them and stuff like that, and a report. Everything that I do in my wine business and stuff, and these people, they're thinking that they're committing mortgage fraud and they're going to get away with it.
Jim.
And she almost did.
Jim, for many people, power is like an aphrodisiac. And you get it sometimes and you go crazy and think you can do and get away with anything. And that's been a problem of some people who assume and acquire power.
Yeah.
And it just goes to their head. and they go crazy and do crazy things.
But and I don't take delight in this, okay, because the Republicans do it, the Democrats do it, and stuff like that. But just briefly, I was looking at the candidates who are running for the New York City mayor. You know, Eric Adams, he was target of a federal investigation. Trump gave him a pardon. I don't know why. And now he's not running as a Democrat. He's running as an independent, although he's not polling very well. I mean, they're all scheming. But I looked at the candidates who are running. New York City is one of the greatest cities, if not the greatest in the world. Okay, and the candidates.
Listen, it's so bad that Andrew Cuomo is an outstanding candidate now.
Oh, I mean, activists.
Who had to resign as governor.
Activists swarmed to defunding the police, and activists who said First Amendment rights are being, reduced, and against the Trump oligarch. I mean, isn't their number one interest supposed to be the city of New York and the taxpayers, the residents, the business people, safety, security? No one's talking about it.
Yeah.
Okay, and they're from nonprofits. Not even a businessman is running. Okay,
All we need now is for Andrew Cuomo to come out and say, "I'll run the city like I ran the state."
Oh.
Into the ground.
But I just don't know what people are looking for, and how these fringe. The people who like the most, who roared the loudest, they win, and then they go in there, and to segue, into the Bernie and AOC show. They're taking it on the road. It's almost like a celebrity circus or something. And I've been reading the stories. They've been getting good crowds. Okay?
Yeah, well, Bernie and AOC, they were attacking oligarchs.
Oh, yeah?
I always thought that Bernie was an oligarch. I mean, here's a guy who started out, he used to attack millionaires.
Yeah.
Then he became a millionaire. So now he attacks billionaires.
Yeah,
So,
and the last I heard, he has 2 homes in Vermont, and then they were saying a cabin out of state someplace. So not bad for a
comrade.
A comrade, yeah, with three homes. But they've been getting these crowds. One crowd they got was almost 20,000, or maybe over 20,000 people. I think it was in California. Then they were in Idaho yesterday, 12,500. But it was interesting.
Jim, slow down. If you're in Idaho, what else are you going to do?
Well,
the show comes to town. You got to go see
The
it.
reporter did a pretty good job on this story, and I don't know what his was a woman. If she had any agenda, it didn't seem like it. She reported things, and they got cheers and applause. But then she talked to people in the crowd, and all these people were disaffected Democrats. Okay, and I don't think, she says, there were no moderates, no conservative, Republicans, and said, this is the same old crowd that Bernie's always played to, and. You think he's going to try to go for the Democrat nomination? Was he 83?
83 years old.
83 years old.
Yeah.
And what's this? Is AOC going to be the presidential candidate for the Democrats?
What a ticket.
How well. I think that's what people are hoping for.
Of course, AOC may want to be on top of the ticket.
Yeah, but she's going to beat Schumer first. You think she's going to run against Schumer?
It's a good possibility. She's raising money
New
left
York
and right.
Yeah.
People give her money. People like her.
Yeah.
She's a very attractive candidate. I mean, if you don't listen to her, if you just watch her, she's pretty attractive.
Yeah.
Once you start listening to her, then that's a different story.
So, but does it matter in your mind who becomes the mayor of New York City?
To me,
Yeah.
no.
No. Okay.
No. I barely am concerned who becomes mayor of Boston and win the Boston Bros.
At one point, there was a lot of, there was some prestige in that job, and people went on to become governor and even maybe run for president stuff, but I don't know, and it's just crazy. And then look what happened in Pennsylvania. Governor Shapiro, a Democrat. I mean, he almost lost his life with his family. A crazed, I don't know, anarchist. He hated both Trump and Shapiro.
Trump called him a whack job.
Yeah, Trump called him a whack job. He goes in there, scales a fence, firebombs the house. I mean, the images of what he did.
During the Jewish Seder holiday.
Yes. And to your point, we were talking earlier. I mean, Shapiro, who's Jewish, and he was celebrating the Jewish holiday. I mean, he hasn't said enough about the anti-Semitism.
He never even brought up anti-Semitism.
Yeah,
but clearly that played a role.
Yeah,
and this whack job threw 2 Molotov cocktails into the house, and he could have murdered the whole family.
Yes, yes, and I just say to myself that it's wacky out there. It's really, really wacky. But you got to crack down on these people, these individuals, these cults, and it's because it's going to get worse and worse. If every time a candidate steps up there and he's going to be or she is going to be subject to a threat or an attack, it's this is America. It shouldn't be happening.
Well, maybe Trump will send him down to El Salvador to do his time, get a nice haircut.
Do you feel uncomfortable about any of these stories that are coming out that, like the Turkish woman, the student from MIT?
No.
No. Okay, why?
Because many of these people who at these colleges are here as guests, and they end up attacking the United States and supporting terrorist organizations like Hamas. Mm. And it's like, why are you here? Why aren't you there? If you support Hamas, go to Palestine and help Hamas in their campaign to kill all the Jews. It's incredible. But they're here as guests and trampling on the place that gave them sanctuary. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah. But where does their free speech rights begin and end? I mean, I think they can go and protest, but the question is when they cross the line and actually
punching somebody in the face is not free expression.
Well, yeah,
it's not free speech.
Spitting in the
at
face,
them, harassing
hitting them
them
with a sign, throwing Molotov cocktails at Teslas and stuff like that. So, but I tell you, it's crazy on some of these campuses, and I hope these parents, where their kids are going to school, really start scrutinizing some of these colleges. There are a lot of good American schools out there where your kids will get a great education.
You got to wonder what a college degree at some of these institutions is worth in the first place these days.
Yeah. Well, in this case of the Columbia student, Mahmoud Khaled, I think it's Khalil. Yeah, and now he's becoming somewhat of a martyr to that crowd.
No, to a small group, he's a martyr.
Yeah, he is. But he got his master's degree, and then he was getting his PhD. Is it a time he left the country? I know he married.
He was 30 years old, still in college.
I know.
I mean, give me a break.
I mean, if he's going to do right for his home country, why didn't he go back? And then even they really don't even know where his home country is.
Syria. He's from Syria.
Well, he says he's from Syria, but then if you look at his resume, his passport, he's been all throughout the Mideast. I wonder where he calls home. It's certainly not American, yet he's spending a lot of time.
He's probably a paid agitator.
Yeah, he's a paid agitator. So well, moving on. Is Trump's tariff war working?
I don't know if the war is working. I don't know if he's going to win the war. He's certainly winning the battles. 170 countries have called into the White House, seeking meetings, seeking to make deals. And it's almost every country in the world except China, which is okay because he's being able to isolate China from all the rest of the countries, which is, I think, a plus.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the only thing is, Trump now is overworked at the White House, yesterday they were working on 15 deals with 15 different countries. So if all these countries are calling Peter, try to make these deals, hopefully we're going to get some resolutions, and we're going to have a press conference every day.
Well, he does that practically every day.
I know he talks to the press.
His energy is just amazing. It's just amazing for a man his age.
And I would think most Americans would think this was a good thing, But all you're hearing about is, the prices are going to go up to the roof, this, that.
Jim, fear, smear, gloom, and doom.
Yeah.
That's all the Democrats have.
Yeah. Sadly, I looked at a pair of golf shoes, brand new golf shoes from FootJoy that I purchased last year. Okay. And I looked inside. I didn't realize they were made in China. Okay.
Jim,
now,
I went to buy a couple of American flags to put at a cemetery recently, and they were made in China. I mean, come on. Enough is enough.
yeah. Yeah, that's
Go. What
crazy.
about your golf shoes?
Well, so I did buy another pair, and I bought them from New Balance, which is made in America, right up the road here in Lawrence, and they have a couple of operations. They employ a lot of Massachusetts people and stuff. So I bought my New Balance shoes. I needed another pair, and. So you know what, and I'm going to try where I can to buy more American products, and hopefully in the years ahead there will be more manufacturers who fill this void.
Well, that's the aim, bringing all this industry that left the country to bring it back.
Yes.
That's the goal.
The only thing is, there's a lot of cheap stuff, made at the dollar store. I mean, I hope that we don't, those aren't the jobs that we really cater to and want, I don't think, in the U.S. So I think you're always going to have the as I call them, the trinkets economy. I mean, we're into science, we're into the environment, we're into biopharmaceuticals. I don't know if I really want them, making electric light bulbs. Okay.
Well,
although maybe that is a big thing. If the lights go out and you can't get them, so, it's going to be interesting. Now, talking about going back to Massachusetts, because Massachusetts is still in the resistance, and I saw where House Speaker Mariano said tax increases are off the table in this budget,
right? Because
Governor Healy, I don't know if she's becoming tone deaf or her staff is tone deaf or what. I mean, shouldn't the governor be saying, well, I proposed these tax increases, but now I see the landscape out there, and maybe we're just going to have to defer these the later times. But she was silent. But Mariano, to his credit, came up and said, hey, you know what? We might be looking at $1 billion shortfall from federal funding and stuff, and we got to start acting, which, to alleviate this problem.
To the state's credit, there is $8 billion in the so-called rainy day fund.
Absolutely.
That the legislature and the governor can call upon in an emergency. I don't know if this qualifies as an emergency, because recently the state's been awash in taxpayer money. And since Joe Biden left, that's been cut off. And the state has to learn to live within its means.
Yeah.
I think that's what the speaker is talking about.
Yes.
And thank God the speaker's there, by the way, because he's sort of like a bulwark. He's like the most experienced of the three leaders that we have, the Senate president and the governor.
Yeah. And these stories that come out of the mainstream media, fear about people losing their jobs and government cutbacks and everything, the hospitals are shedding people, doctors, nurses. I mean, I think it was Mass General and Brigham and Women's. They're cutting 2,000 jobs and billions of dollars between now and 2026, and not a peep, not a peep about, and they're talking about people, healthcare providers. Last year, the legislature looked at a report: 43% increase in health provider costs. Okay, I mean, in this state, it's crazy, and there's no answer, because this comes up every year with the budget. It's a huge budget killer, the Mass Connect and everything else, and yet, all they're looking at is some interns and probationers who might lose their jobs because of cuts from federal funding, and real people who supply service to Massachusetts citizens are losing their jobs. Doctors, nurses, and the whole system seems to be crumbling. And no task force, nothing going on.
Well, maybe it's time to move to Maine.
Oh, speaking of Maine, how is your governor up there doing?
Janet Mills, Governor Mills, a nice person. She has her hands full, particularly dealing with Donald Trump. And the big issue there, her support of men in playing in women's sports, which is not going over too well with the residents of Maine. But she's insisting on supporting it. And, as Maine goes, so goes Massachusetts.
Well, I tell you, she is just on the wrong side of the line on that one, I tell you, and it's just a matter of time, I think, because she just won election.
She's in her last term. She's a term limited.
Okay.
And but she has a lot in common politically, philosophically, with Governor Healy. I mean, they're both progressive Democrats and believe in many of the same things. Unfortunately, most people disagree with them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, we'll see what happens there. And I got to bring this up. You wrote a damn good column this past week about the Teamsters president. Is he the president? Is that what?
Yeah, Sean O'Brien.
Sean O'Brien. And
he's the international president of the Teamsters Union.
Yes, and it was a great column, added a lot of clarity. But I got to give you credit, Peter. You come up with these ideas and you make a suggestion, and you know what? Saying that, gee, what if he ran for governor? He could be a pretty good candidate and stuff. And I did some research. There are. Union membership is on the rise in Massachusetts.
Yes,
it's increasing, and there are by some accounts 430,000 union members. Okay, almost as many. There are like 523,000 registered Republican voters in this state. So you almost have as many union members. Okay, well, 100,000 short, but it's interesting. I mean, if a guy like Mr. O'Brien, Sean O'Brien, runs for governor as a Democrat, okay, a moderate Democrat,
he could be a force in the primary.
Oh,
if
yeah.
he ran as a Democrat.
With that built-in now, with that built-in base, and the common sense approach that he's taken, because your column was how he basically said tariffs were good. He was one of the few people in the state who actually came out and supported Trump and say, hey, this is going to be good for American industries.
Right.
And
well, he's very outspoken, and he's where he stands on every issue. And he's a Democrat, but he spoke at the Republican National Convention after the Democratic Party refused to let him speak at their convention.
That was amazing.
So, say, what's going on?
Yeah.
But he's the type of individual, he could run as a Republican.
Yeah.
He could get the support of Donald Trump.
Yeah. He could do some real damage, but the main thing is how he's opening eyes. I mean
Listen, I think the candidates running for governor the Republican Party, particularly, making a big mistake. They're running away from Donald Trump.
Yeah.
They should be running for Donald Trump,
Run
with
to the
Donald
light.
Trump.
Run to the light.
And no Republican is going to get elected in this state campaigning against Donald Trump. There's just it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because the governor will be campaigning against Donald Trump.
Yeah. And even though it's a tall order, even if you do get Trump support, you're facing long odds. But at least you're going to tell it like it is, hopefully, and get the Democrats to at least react and maybe change some of their ideological nonsense that they push. So that would be. Interesting. So, what else is on your plate, Peter? Anything interesting?
My closing remarks would be something like this. I'm waiting for Tom Hanks, who's Joe Biden lookalike, to come into Massachusetts and make the movie of Joe Biden's life. And we're going to call it Saving Joe Biden.
Well, I think that's great. I'd love to see that. I just want to close by saying, I'm reading the book 𝐉𝐢𝐦 𝐂𝐚𝐦𝐻𝐿. It came out several years ago. Adam Lazarus wrote it. It's about the relationship of John Glenn and Ted Williams. They served together in Korea, and Ted Williams was John Glenn's wingman.
Both combat pilots, right?
Both combat pilots for 8 flights. But I tell you, I didn't know much about John Glenn except for being an astronaut, and I know he was a U.S. Senator, a Democrat from Ohio. And the interesting thing is, these guys stayed friends throughout their life, even though they did lose contact after Williams retired and went into different things. But Ted Williams was a staunch Republican.
Right.
And I know when Glenn was considering, he did run for president.
I covered it.
Yeah. And the Glenn people they were coming to Massachusetts, and they figured it would be great if they could get an endorsement of Ted Williams. And Ted Williams loved John Glenn. He credits Glenn with saving his life in a crash, and he was hit by enemy fire in Korea and stuff. And he'd do almost anything for Glenn, but he was a Nixon man.
That's right.
Williams was a Nixon man.
That's right.
And later in life, he said his only regret was that he couldn't endorse John Glenn. He didn't say if he wished he could change his mind and vote, and endorse Glenn. He just says, my only regret is that I couldn't, support John Glenn because he was a Democrat. But the book is fascinating, and the history of those two. But Glenn was an impressive man from New Concord, Ohio, born poor, and boy, I tell you, really made his point.
He was like he was an old soldier. He was a very interesting guy.
Yeah,
and
Ted could be crass. And but I forgot about a lot of things that Ted Williams did. I mean, he actually, the forerunner of the Jimmy Fund, but he'd go in the back door. He didn't want, a lot of these guys nowadays, they want the cameras flashing, TikTok and Instagram. Right. Ted said no. He didn't want reporters to know, and he made visits that people, didn't know about, and he'd go to people's homes. Kids suffering from cancer, he'd go to the homes.
Jim, I was at Fenway Park in his last ball game when he hit the home run, and that was his last game.
Yes,
and
1960.
There were like 13,000 people there at the time, and now, in retrospect, there's 1 million people who were there.
Yeah. Yeah,
but we should comment on Joe Biden for finally making a speech the other day. The only thing I regretted in the speech, he talked about Social Security. He should have taken a line from General MacArthur when he retired after 50 years as a combat general officer, when he addressed Congress, and he said, old soldiers never die; they just fade away. And that's what Joe Biden should have said. Old politicians like me never die, and I'm just going to fade away.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think we'll end it. I hope you have a great week. Right, Peter? And we'll see you next week. Take care.